are times in a man's life where he wonders why he gave up a well-paid career to make silly videos about cars on YouTube. And then there are days like today where you get to spend time with a Hyundai IONIQ 5N. And spoiler alert folks, before we get started in this review, there's not too much negative in here because this is quite simply one of the best driving machines available on the road today, and it happens to be electric. Lots of people will be saying to themselves, it's not a proper car, it's not a proper hot hatch, it's electric, it's a toaster, all those kind of things, and that's all nonsense folks. This is not a hot hatch, it's a super hatch. Just look at these numbers, 600 brake horsepower in your standard modes. If you press the NGB button, that takes you up to 641 brake horsepower for 10 seconds. So you've got a little boost if you need it. You don't, by the way. 0 to 60 on this is 3.4 seconds, 161 mile an hour top speed. And at full tilt, the electric motors are going at 21,000 RPM. It's got huge brakes, 21-inch wheels, and as you can see, styling-wise, it looks quite different to the standard IONIQ 5. Just look at it, folks. Every time you look at this car, you see something else that's just different and cool and there for a purpose. It's a fantastic looking, aggressive looking, unique looking car, and I think it looks all the better in this N-Series Performance Blue. You can only get that in proper N-Series Hyundais, by the way. You can get it in other colours, but don't. Just get this one. It looks amazing. Now, this is not a long-range car. It's a performance car. Officially, the WLTP figures 278 miles. I find the EPA figures are actually usually a bit more sensible and a bit more realistic. 221 miles is the EPA figure. Has got the 84 kilowatt hour battery, but obviously it's not that efficient. I've just run up here in eco mode this morning. It's about a 25-minute drive and I've got 3.1 miles per kilowatt hour from the car. If you start to let the car stretch its legs a bit, if you get a bit lively with it, that figure drops quite dramatically. But I think that 221 mile figure is realistic. You don't have to worry too much about it because this has got 800 volt architecture. It means if you plug it into a super fast charger, you can charge this at 240 kilowatts. And that's astounding. Probably in a 10-minute charge, you're going to stick 100 miles into this quite comfortably. Hyundai have some of the best architecture for that, and the charge curve stays nice and high for quite a long time. Speaking of charging, just a very quick word from today's sponsor.
Is your EV charger sat unused for days on end? Start making a few extra quid by renting it out on 𝙇𝙄𝙉𝙆𝙎, the EV charger sharing app. Using a friendly online community, members get access to bookable and reliable EV charging, often priced much cheaper than public chargers and in places where infrastructure isn't always available. And with my promo code NOTAGURU, you get 180 days free use at sign up. So download 𝙇𝙄𝙉𝙆 for iPhone and Android and see what you could earn.
Now in the driving test, I'm going to talk more about how you can use this as a completely normal family car and what the results are with that, because I think that's important and it's sometimes missed out on these kind of things because it is such an epic performance car. We forget the fact that most people are going to be using it in a different way on a day-to-day basis. So I'll talk about how it works in that respect in a mo. But let's have a look at the boot, because although it's down from the standard IONIQ 5 with 527 litres, this one has 480 litres. But as you can see, it's a really nice, big, usable space. Almost a completely flat floor. You've got space under there to keep your charging cables and things. And I think that could cram in enough for most family holidays. In the back, you'll find the rear seats very comfortable, legroom plentiful, and there's also a decent amount of tow room. In the middle here, you've got two USB-Cs. We've got air vents here on these pillars, and you've also got heated seats and rear blinds. This could be quite a gloomy cabin in the back because we've got a dark headliner and dark interior, but you've got this huge panoramic sunroof, and it really is huge, and it does give more of a kind of open and airy feeling to the people in the back. Headroom wise, it's okay but unspectacular. If you're much taller than 6 foot, you'll probably find it a little bit cramped headroom wise, but for a short fat bloke like me, it's completely fine. You could get 3 adults across the back here with pretty much no problem, largely thanks to that huge amount of legroom and the fact there's no transmission tunnel, of course. Very well designed rear cabin, very nice place to sit and travel. Step into the front cabin and the first thing you notice are these seats. They're lovely. They really get hold of you. They're obviously sports performance bucket seats. They're really comfortable and they just grab you everywhere they should. They feel amazing if you're driving the car as it's intended to be driven, or indeed if you're pootling down to Tesco's. For me, the driving position again is superb. I've got all the visibility I need. Every control I want is exactly where I want it. I think it's very well designed sort of ergonomically. We do still have physical shortcut buttons for the important things down here. The aircon system is on a touch screen, but everything's there permanently. It's no problem to use whatsoever. And we've got an excellent driver information display and infotainment system. I'm using wireless Apple CarPlay, which is available in this one. And you've got plenty of real estate for that. But even, you know, the standard Hyundai system is very, very good, and they've really honed it over the years. Driver information display is very configurable. This car's got lots of different drive modes, lots of customization, and that goes for the driver information display as well. You will have seen, no doubt, the NE shift, I think they call it, which is the simulated manual gearbox. That seems like a gimmick, and when I first read about that, I thought, this is a gimmick, it's going to be awful. Why? I'm going to do a separate video about it, okay, and I'll link it at the end of this one when it's out, because I think it's probably one of the most misunderstood things about this car. That simulated manual gearbox is so incredibly realistic. It's even got a rev limiter. It just gives you a level of engagement with the car that you wouldn't otherwise have with a performance electric car. And I can't speak highly enough about it. You've also got the simulated engine noises. They don't sound fantastic when you're sitting at a standstill, but when you're actually on the road and you're using the car in a performance mode, they sound great. And I think something a lot of people will overlook is the fact that if this were an internal combustion engine car, it's going to have, what, a 2-litre petrol engine with a turbo on it. It's going to be 4 cylinders. It's not going to be a V10, you know, it's not going to be giving you eargasms. It's just going to sound like a revvy engine, which might sound good enough, but it's not going to sound anything amazing. This sounds really cool. This is different, and I like it. You can, of course, have that switched off. You can control the volume of it. You can have it on the outside of the car if you want. You can have it on the inside of the car if you want. You can have it on both. It's up to you. The choices are endless. And you can also dive into this menu system and change so many features about the car. You've got 2 N buttons here. You can set up custom modes. You can have the suspension at track setting where the motor's at a lower setting. You can do what you want. I've never seen such a configurable, customizable car, but it's just so impressive. It really has been well engineered and well designed, and they deserve every possible award that this car gets because it's exquisite, folks. On to more sensible things for a second. On the original IONIQ 5, the USB ports were in an odd place. They were kind of right down by your feet. And there were a couple of things about the central console that could have been a bit better. And I think they've corrected those in this car. So we've got 2 USB-Cs up here and 1 here. So the passenger has their own one. You've got the 12-volt socket there, a couple of cup holders, wireless phone charger here. Everything's where you want it to be. Everything's sensible and in an obvious place. And in general terms, in terms of material quality, it just all feels robust and well put together. With this kind of car, sometimes there's a tendency for manufacturers to make the interior look like someone's just driven through wish.com and put on a load of bolt-on tat. They haven't done that in this one. It's just nice and classy and perhaps even slightly understated. The steering wheel's not so understated. As I mentioned previously, you've got the 2 different N buttons for different modes. You've got drive mode selector and you've got that NGB button that gives you those extra 41 horsepowers for 10 seconds. You've also got physical buttons and dials for things like volume control, lane keep assist, all that kind of stuff. It's all here. The stalks are all well laid out. You've got your gear selector or drive selector down here, as has become the norm on Hyundai electric vehicles. And altogether, folks, it's a big thumbs up from me. So I'm starting off the test drive section of this review, driving around little country lanes at 20 to 30 miles an hour. And you may be wondering to yourself why on earth I'm doing that in a performance car like the Hyundai IONIQ 5N. A pony has just stepped out into the road in front of me. Well, that's part of the reason. I'm in the New Forest and there are ponies wandering about everywhere like they own the place. Well, they kind of do. Well, I'm driving this car around in eco mode for one really good reason, and that's because most of the time you're in this car, you're going to be going about your daily normal business. You're going to be driving to work, you're going to be driving to Tesco's, you're going to be doing all the things you normally do, but you're going to be doing them in this amazing performance car. Now, in a lot of performance cars and hot hatches, if you like, that means you're going to have a very bumpy ride. It might mean it's a car that doesn't particularly like being driven at 20 or 30 miles an hour and is a little bit of a handful, and it might give you a little bit of fatigue. It might also be a bit leery and noisy, and you might look like a bit of a knob when you pull up outside the school with your exhaust crackling and banging, etc. Well, when you're in eco mode in this car, it feels like an IONIQ 5, albeit with slightly nicer suspension maybe. It's an incredible sort of sheep in wolf's clothing, I suppose you'd call it. It does the job of being a normal everyday car extremely well, and probably better than any performance car I can think of. I'd happily have this as my day-to-day runaround, and I'm not going to need new fillings in my teeth after a week because the ride's so hard. I'm not going to feel uncomfortable on normal journeys. It feels great. It's just a lovely thing to drive. However, when you press that drive mode button or you choose one of these M modes, you go from this really quiet, really serene, nice, calm, relaxing thing to an absolute fire-breathing monster that will just do absolutely anything you want it to. The amount of control you have over this car with your right foot and this round thing in front of me is incredible. The corners like it's on rails. It's just astounding. I think Isaac Newton would rip up his rule book and go back and rewrite the laws of gravity if he'd had the chance to travel in one of these, because it completely defies everything we know at the moment. The chassis is exquisite. It's so rigid and so firm and so direct, yet it's still comfortable. You know, the suspension you would expect to really crash and bang around. And yes, if you're going over a bumpy surface, you're going to spring around a little bit, but it's all really nicely damped. This is an engineering marvel. It really is. I'm not going to drive the backside off this car in this video, by the way, because I'm in the New Forest and it just wouldn't be right to do so. But I will show you how we go from eco mode, which we're in now, which as you can hear is really very quiet, really quite serene, to one of my custom modes here, which now gives me full manual gear control via the paddle shifters. I've got the engine noise being piped in. You immediately feel the car's got more power. You immediately feel the car stiffen up a bit, and it becomes a completely different beast. The head-up display changes, the dials change. We've got information about the revs. We've got information about the gears. It's suddenly a different monster. We've got the motor temperatures front and back. We've got the battery temperature information. We've got tyre information. Everything's on screen, and it's just so very different an experience. So I'm going to pull out onto the dual carriageway in a second, and I can go through the gears a bit. It's difficult not to refer to it as a gearbox because of course there is no gearbox, there are no gears, but it just feels like a gearbox. Whichever way you skin it, it's completely simulated but completely authentic. You feel the slight blip through the gears, you know, a very slight jerk, but it doesn't feel artificial at all. The revs feel completely natural. It's just astounding, and it gives you a level of engagement that you don't get in any other electric car. It pops, it crackles, it bangs, it responds. I think if you're using the manual gears and you've got the engine noise on, although it doesn't sound like a real engine, it sounds different, you forget about it. When you're in the driving seat in this car, you forget about everything that's artificial. You could be in any car with any engine, it just works, folks. Honestly, folks, hit that custom button and every facet of this car is set up to your individual preference, and you forget about anything being synthetic, and you just start to appreciate and experience what is a completely visceral driving experience. It's as simple as that. Oh. So there's one thing I don't like about this car, and it's when you hit that NGB button, which gives you those extra 41 horsepower, it takes you out of manual gear mode, which seems completely counterintuitive, just seems odd. And then once it runs out, you're back in sort of manual mode. But I just don't know why it's wired that way. I'm sure a software update will correct that at some point. Of course, this car is capable of over-the-air updates, and also vehicle to load, which is quite swish. Now folks, I'm in a very fortunate position where I get to drive lots of cars and lots of performance cars and lots of electric performance cars. And I have to say, there are cars out there that can do 0 to 60 faster than this one. There are no electric cars out there that are more fun than this one, that give you more engagement than this one, and that just have as much personality as this one. I'm in love. Now, for obvious reasons, getting the most out of one of these cars on public roads is just not possible, nor should it be attempted. But I have had the privilege of taking one around a track, and the performance is breathtaking. I mean, it just handles unbelievably. The front end is like it's on rails. It just goes exactly where you want it to go. And if you want to get a bit leery and get the tail out a little bit, that's very, very easy to do, but not too easy. And of course, with all those custom features that you've got in this car, you can set everything to match your level of talent. In days of old, many people have run out of talent in hot hatches. And when you talk about a super hatch, and I keep calling this a super hatch because it really is, it's a hot hatch with supercar performance, you could very easily run out of talent. So the fact that that is so customizable can only be a good thing for you and the other users of the road. But seriously, if you want a car that you can drive to Tesco's at the weekend and do the school run and your trip to work during the week in complete comfort, and then take it to the track at the weekend and let all hell break loose, I can't think of anything better right now. This is an all-round outstanding machine, and anyone that calls it a toaster, quite frankly, is a bit of a knob. I don't know if it's quite come across in this video, but I'm absolutely in love with this car. I'm besotted by it. It's amazing in every way. It's simply superb. And I know there'll be people saying, well, it's not a 911 GT3. Well, it's also however many hundreds of thousands of pounds cheaper than one of those. They'll be saying it's not a BMW M5. No, but it's a bit lighter than one, and it's a bit cheaper than one. And it's different, you know, different's not always a bad thing. We don't have to be terrified by electric cars. This is a car that could convert many a petrol head. There'll be a lot of people watching this video that are saying, well, I'm still not going to drive one because it's a toaster or something. Great, you crack on, folks. You crack straight on. Don't worry about it. You're missing out on something incredible and something you haven't experienced in the past, whatever you've driven. This is different, and the good folks at Hyundai and the designer of this vehicle need to be knighted. It's amazing. Get one. If you'd like to get one and you haven't got £65,000, but you might think about leasing one, check out the link to Lease Loco in the video description. And don't forget to check out our partners 𝙇𝙄𝙉𝙆𝙎, link also down in the video description. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll see you on the next one.
Huge thanks to all my channel members for your continued support. I really do appreciate it.